Welcome back. Today I'll tell you the story of how I grew taller. I was being told so many things about myself by my mom. My hair was too scanty or too fine. I was not smart or sharp enough. I was not tall enough. Plus, Molly teased me relentlessly about my big fat nose that sat disproportionately on my small face. We had a mirror in the house placed in front of the wash basin. It was the typical mirror you got at the time, with some inlaid design around the border and a mirrored shelf towards its bottom. There was a pre existing nail that had been drilled into the wall, presumably by a previous tenant, and the mirror was fitted on that nail. It was hung on that nail. This made the mirror too high for me, and all I could see of myself in it were my eyes. Above that was the shelf. So basically, I could just see a slit where my eyes were visible. Then the shelf came in the way, and I could not even, see my head in that mirror. Just my eyes in that strip of mirror were visible under the mirrored shelf. At that time, I was very spiritual and religious. Mom had made it a point to teach us the Gurmukhi script, and we also spoke Punjabi fluently. Inspired by mom's stories, I was a regular at the Gurdwara and prayed every spare moment that I got. Now, my most fervent prayer was to become taller. Molly had always been tall, right from birth. Ruby was also tall, as was mom. Dad was the average Indian male height. In mom's family, everyone was super tall. That left me as the shortest person in the house, and I was constantly reminded of it, pitied even. Mom never wore heel shoes in case that made her look taller than dad. She also started stooping a little so that she did not look too tall. I had the opposite problem. What could I do to become taller? My anemia and food allergies had not yet been diagnosed. I was primarily thriving on pure carbs, simple carbs, not very healthy food, but at least food that I could digest. All that I knew as a little girl was that I was desperate to become taller, at least as tall as someone else in the house. And so I prayed and prayed very fervently. My prayer went something like this: Please, dear Lord, let me be able to see my entire face in the mirror. Since everyone else in the family could see their entire face in the mirror, I just wanted to match up. And so it went day and night. Whenever I was in front of that wash basin mirror, the prayer was repeated. The mirror was a trigger to repeat my prayer. I prayed in all earnestness from the bottom of my heart. All I wanted was to be able to see my entire face in the mirror. It was a very specific prayer. By the time I was 9 or 10, Dad had been promoted to manager and was eligible to move to the manager's building. The promotion also meant having a car instead of a motorbike. The rooms in the manager's building were bigger, and also the houses in the building had two bedrooms instead of the one that we had so far. But the problem was that none of the houses in that building were vacant yet. So even though it was a year or so after Dad's promotion, we had not yet moved to the bigger house. Every evening, I would stand in my balcony wistfully looking at the manager's building and wishing with all my heart to be able to move into the bigger house soon. Finally, we moved. We got a choice between two apartments, one on the ground floor, first floor for Americans, and one on the fourth floor. That would be the fifth floor for Americans. This building did not have an elevator, so selecting a fourth floor apartment meant climbing to the fourth floor multiple times a day. Yet, we selected the fourth floor apartment because of the stunning view. I have mentioned a little wood that was near our house. This fourth floor apartment gave us a bird's eye view of the little wood, a view of the canopy, of all the treetops. We looked in fascination at the vast sea of green, various shades, And in between, this was speckled with splashes of red or yellow when a tree was flowering. Right next to the balcony stood the stunning gulmohar tree in full bloom, with its majestic red blossoms almost touching our balcony. We were sold. We chose to climb to the fourth floor multiple times a day for the view, just for that stunning view. Mom had always been keen on having a garden, being a naturally gifted gardener. She had an elaborate garden at Dapchari that not only consisted of flowering plants such as the marigold and periwinkle and rose bushes, but also had thriving fruit trees such as guava, mango, and coconut. This was in addition to the fields over there in Dapchari. A ground floor apartment would have been ideal for garden tending, but Mom indulged us and let us choose the house that we preferred. Mom did create her garden after we moved to the manager's building, and we tended it beautifully in spite of living on the fourth floor. By the time we got possession of this bigger house, I was about 12 years old. The two buildings, the one where I lived earlier and the one we were moving into, were about 15 or so, 10 or 15 feet away from each other. The way we moved was to grab as many items from our house as we could, then walk to the manager's building, climb the 4 floors, and place the items in the appropriate room of the new house. This was the way we moved everything, endless loop of doing this. Go to the old building, grab as many items as we could in our hands, walk up to the manager's building, climb the 4 floors, place the things there. I'm not sure how the bigger pieces of furniture were moved though. But I do remember later when we witnessed someone using a moving truck to move that short distance, we were surprised and appalled. That had been unheard of till then. Such extravagance and unnecessary expenditure. I was so overjoyed and grateful to finally have my wish of moving to the manager's building granted. I just stood in the balcony and smiled, taking in the amazing view. Things in the house were still chaotic and messy after the move, but would settle soon. Some items had already been placed at their appropriate places. Later, after enjoying my evening in the balcony with the view, I walked up to the wash basin to wash my hands before dinner. I looked up at the mirror and was stunned. Guess what I saw? Yes, you guessed it. I saw my whole face, my entire face, in that same mirror. In this house, too, a previous tenant had drilled a nail into the wall in front of the wash basin for placing the mirror. However, the position of the nail in this house was about a foot or so lower than it had been in the previous house. In amazement, I stared at my entire face in the mirror, uninterrupted by the mirror shelf. For a few moments, I was blown away. I had been played, and how? Punked, pranked, or some such thing, I should say. This was one way of granting my wish. Technically, it was legit. I mean, looks like there had been a loophole in my prayer. And that loophole had been taken advantage of. I did not even know what to think about this whole episode. For ages, I had prayed and prayed with all my heart. And now, my prayer had been answered only with a twist. Like the creative consciousness whom we address as God had a sense of humor and was now having a good laugh at my expense. Of course, when I had prayed, the divine consciousness was bound to know what I actually meant. Taller. I had meant make me taller. In my mind, it had amounted to the same thing. Praying to be able to see my entire face in that particular mirror and getting taller. And yet, here I was, staring at my entire face in the wash basin mirror, the same mirror, and not a millimeter taller than I had been the previous day. I remained 160 centimeters, which roughly translates to 5 feet 3 inches. It was a few years before I discovered that I was of average Indian height and not super short as my family had me believe. So I was okay about my height afterwards, though I did remain the shortest family member in my family. But it's okay now. Turns out, even my hair was not scanty. On the contrary, I had thick, lustrous, beautiful hair. Just not as thick as the rest of my family. And I was not a super dumb student, as my family had me believe. I was an average student with average grades. So I guess my family just had unusually high standards for everything. And that is why they constantly made me feel less, that I was lesser than what I should have been. That did affect me constantly and subtly played a role in every action and decision, even later in life, much later in life also. But more about that later. That's all for now, folks. I'll see you soon with a new episode. Till then, stay healthy, stay happy. Bye for now.